Hi, it's Mike Bear with Free Speech Media. It's my great pleasure to welcome Jeff Ansell. Uh, Jeff is an internationally renowned communications trainer, a best selling media communications author, and a lecturer on dealing with an angry public and crisis communications at Harvard. His book, When the Headline Is You, An Insider's Guide to Handling the Media, has been on Amazon PR bestseller and is on the curriculum of many universities and colleges. Jeff served as a vice president of Hill and Knowlton, a global public relations firm, where he created Canada's media training department. As an investigative reporter, Jeff went undercover to expose drug pushing physicians, earning him an award for the most significant contribution to the improvement of news gathering in the country. In another investigation, Jeff caught two Nazi war criminals who murdered 16,000 people. His exploits hunting Nazis were highlighted in the film The Accountant of Auschwitz, featured in the Canadian International Documentary Festival. Jeff's experience as an award winning journalist gives him keen insight into how news is gathered, interpreted, and reported. Welcome, Jeff. I'm here with Jeff Ansell. And Jeff, the floor is yours. Basically, it's an open forum. We can talk about anything you like. I have a special interest in investigative reporting since it's something, a new retirement career for me. And we could talk about the media. I've interviewed quite a few interesting people at Dundas Square who believe that the media is sort of a propaganda arm of the government. Other people have told me that it's actually not a propaganda arm of the government. It's a propaganda arm of global elitists. I mean, there's all kinds of things that you can hear out there. But like I said, the floor is yours. Give us your thoughts. Give us some wisdom.
You're very kind. Is media a government arm? That's a real big question. We could address it later if you like. I have a background as an investigative journalist and had opportunity to do some really exciting stuff. I went undercover for a year. I posed as a drug addict wired with a hidden microphone to expose two doctors in Toronto who were pushing drugs. I became their patient. Then wired with the hidden mic, I went to visit these docs every week for a year, gave me voluminous amounts of drugs, and end result, I did an hour-long documentary on Chum FM and across the Chum radio network at the time. The documentary was called Pillars of Parkdale, and I had the good fortune of being nominated for the Governor General's Journalism Award, but more importantly, both doctors involved in the investigation were brought before the disciplinary boards and suffered as a result of their behavior. And then I posed, I did a lot of undercover work. I worked capturing Nazi war criminals too. I spent a year in pursuit of two Nazi war criminals who lived in Toronto, who collectively murdered 16,500 Jews. I hated every minute of it. It was just terrible to work on because I wanted to kill these bastards myself. The end result was one of the Nazis was extradited to Germany for trial, and the other outcome was the article you see behind me was in the final issue of Today magazine on war criminals. It was the cover story, and it told of how easy it was for Nazis to infiltrate Canada, while the victims of the Nazis themselves had to stay in displaced labor camps after the war. So I had a really activist career as a reporter, as an investigative reporter. Big difference.
Well, that's very much true. It seems like most of the media just takes a story that's been already reported on and spins it somehow. They don't actually go out and gather the original news, so there's not much value that they're adding.
Well, it's not even so much as spin the news. There's a way to throw news stories together, and this is, I guess, from time immemorial, but more pronounced now, where reporters are looking to cast characters as they identify themes and create narratives to help tell the story. And these days, anytime you want to spend some time with me going through the newspapers, we can go through them together. It's a predictable cast of characters. If it's a good news story, you want to come across as a thought leader, a visionary, a change agent, trailblazer, and so on and so forth. But in stories with a negative slant, you're either competent or incompetent. You're either smart or stupid. You're either good or evil. Ain't nothing in between. It's either black and white. There's no color gray. And so the media are quick to paint by numbers as they identify the characters in their narrative. And so that's what newsmakers, this is why I moved to the other side. I had my kick at the can for reporting, and it was good. I had a good run. But I realized it's not a level playing field here, because the dynamic of communicating with media represents a very unnatural dynamic. It's got nothing to do with everyday conversation or how smart you are or how quick you are on your feet. It can oftentimes be a scheming, stilted, conniving dynamic that comes naturally to nobody, and that includes me. Nobody ever gets good at dealing with the media because it is such an unnatural beast.
I'd have to agree with that. And it seems to have become more and more unnatural as time has gone on. I mean, the respect and admiration that the public used to hold for news reporters, like journalists, is evaporated. It's gone. What happened?
Well, cutbacks in newsrooms, a lot of journalists are gone. That's just the way it is. That's why you'll see publications like Newsweek and so on, and like the National Post, especially on weekends, going heavy on comment, which is timeless usually, or undated. It doesn't have to appear in today's paper. And people, the media have tended to, with great respect, dumb down the news. They have a lot of competition these days from many, many platforms. And so in order to penetrate the media filter, they create narratives that are so simple that anybody can understand. There was another point I was going to make. It'll come back to me in a second, Mike.
Oh, no problem. Now, I had one gentleman tell me that he believes that the public is addicted to negative news, and the media is just feeding them what they want.
Well, it's a shame. It's the reason I left news, and I wrote about this in my book. The reason I left the world of news was because I was anchoring at 6 o'clock one day here in Toronto on City TV, and we had no lead story. All we had was a stabbing victim, which is a terrible event, but it's not a lead story in a major market TV station. And so at 10 to 6 one night in August, the assignment editor got on the loudspeaker in the newsroom and announced to all, good news, we have a lead story. The stabbing victim died. And the newsroom erupted in a cheer.
Oh, jeez.
And that's the day I quit. And what bothers me, and the thought came back to me, Mike, what bothers me is that the media try to tell us how to think.
Mm.
I don't need to be reminded that President Trump, falsely told people today, tell me the story, then tell me what President Trump said, and I'll decide for myself whether it's false or not. But I don't like the trend, and it's going in a direction that's going to be harmful to society and the next generation.
Actually, that's one of the things that motivated me to start this new career as an investigative journalist. Is I just want to put the information out there, and people can listen to it and watch it and decide for themselves what they want to make out of it. I mean, I obviously have my biases, I have my viewpoints and such, but I just put out the recordings and let people hear it. I got my first strike from YouTube yesterday. It was a 6-minute conversation with a gentleman in his 80s at Dundas Square in Toronto. He's part of the civil rights protest. And he basically had quite an interesting message. I guess it would be quite counter to the government message or the media message, which seems to be the same thing. But it was quite interesting that YouTube struck the video claimed it was medical misinformation. Maybe if you have 6 minutes, I could show it to you, and maybe you could make some comments on it if you like.
Well, we could do it today. We could do it another time as well.
Sure.
The media can make something out of nothing. And, these days, everybody is so afraid of being not even quoted out of context. They're just afraid of being quoted. They
Why?
don't, well, they don't want to be canceled. One thing that dealing with media really requires more than anything is the ability to manage the context of the conversation. And in order to manage the context of the conversation, a person needs to be in control of every sentence that leaves their lips. And that's a learned skill, because you answer a question with 10 sentences, you ain't going to see 10 sentences in the report. You're only going to see the one that fits the narrative that the journalist was looking to slot you into.
Now, who's driving the narrative? That's what I'm wondering. One of the gentlemen I interviewed, he said, they say in Russia they have a state-run media, and he said here we have a media-run state. So he thinks it's the media that's driving the agenda rather than the government.
Well, the media tends to gravitate to particular political viewpoints, and those viewpoints have been more and more extreme on either side. And so what's missing is something in the middle. And it's very disconcerting, because I'm glad you've created freespeech.ca, because there's no place to go.
Well, I actually created a couple more. I got freespeechmedia.ca, and I did get a .com as well, free-speech-media.com. And I'm trying to get freespeechmedia.com as well, but we'll see if the owner will give it up. I don't know.
It'll cost.
But I'm trying to get the message out there. Present some some different viewpoints, and then people can make up their own mind. But now I think the universities have been tilting towards the left for decades, probably maybe 4 decades now, or longer even, perhaps. And I agree with you. It's becoming increasingly radical, and it seems like almost like 90+% of all the journalism graduates have very, very far left views. Now, how does that work? Like the public is looking for some fair, balanced reporting, and 90+% of all the graduates of journalism are already indoctrinated in far left ideology.
This is why perhaps we need to look beyond the mainstream media, because the mainstream media, follow that formula of good or evil, competent or incompetent, and it's very prevalent. And these reporters have a lot of influence with people, and reporters who are on the left side of the spectrum seem to predominate these days. And people are dancing to their tune.
Why do you think that is? Why are Canadians so obedient and so submissive? They just do what they're told.
That's an interesting question. Well, first of all, Canadians are submissive. That's number one. Number two, in some cases, it's easier if somebody does the thinking for you, rather than you doing your investigating to find out about, Hunter Biden and so on. The media will do it for you, or won't do it for you.
Well, actually, let's talk about that for a second. Do you think the media actually sat on the Hunter Biden story until after the election, and they knew full well that it might bring Biden down, and then obviously somebody's got to step in, and that would be, their preferred choice?
Yes, I believe that. It was clear.
Yeah. I mean, I just, for the life of me, I couldn't understand how they could nominate Biden in the first place. I mean, it's the man is going senile. He's feeble. I mean, he just broke his foot like playing with his dog, or that's the story. And he's about to die. I mean, he's an old man. he's the old. He'll be the oldest president, elected president, if I'm not mistaken.
Uh, yes, and let me say that personally speaking, I wish him well. This is the last generation of leadership at that age, at that level, and no more.
Hmm.
It's now it's Kamala's turn, and that generation, and so he's the last of the old guard.
Now it's interesting to see what's going on. I mean, I think though that in 4 years there's going to be such a big backlash. Uh, if they don't get Trump again, they'll get somebody worse, like there's somebody even more populist who's willing to just, do things that really haven't been done before.
Well, it's possible. There's also an established, GOP that maybe will be a little more on guard in terms of letting their party be hijacked as it was in the 2016. And now anybody, if you got money and profile, can be president. Look at Mark Cuban. Maybe he'll be president one day soon.
Well, if you can buy enough advertising, I guess you can be president, right? Well,
It's a whole
but look at Justin Trudeau. I mean, I don't think Justin Trudeau would have ever been elected if it wasn't for the assistance of the media. I mean, I don't think we've ever had a more unqualified prime minister in the history of Canada, right? I mean, what was his prior experience? A part-time drama teacher? That makes you like worthy of becoming, one of the most powerful politicians in the country. I don't understand that.
son of a former prime minister that many people revered, a mother who had a high profile was in the news, and plus Mike, he has good hair.
I've heard that, but it doesn't impress me that much, to be honest with you. Before he even got elected, when he was asked about what form of government he admired, he said he admired the basic dictatorship of China. And people thought, oh, it's just a silly remark. But he has actually followed through, and he's adopted some of the same type of things that the Communist Chinese Party would do here in Canada.
He's also taken the opportunity to flatter if the Castro's regime.
Yeah. Well,
Well,
why do you think he has such an admiration and love for these communist murderous thugs?
well, I think his father had a degree of admiration for these leaders. He saw some merit in their dictatorships, and he inherited some of that philosophy.
Now, I agree with you. I think that's probably true, but he's certainly not an intellectual like his father was. His father was an intelligent man. Justin, I don't think the same thing could be said.
Oh, he's bright. He's bright.
He is bright.
In a lot of areas, and he's very, very knowledgeable. It's his judgment that comes into question on, for instance, the Wee scandal. I mean, you could smell that one coming a mile away. And I don't know how they thought they'd sneak that one through.
Is it just arrogance? Does he think that he can do anything he wants?
When people reach a certain level, they think they can do things that perhaps can sneak through the process without being noticed. I mean, why does Arnold Schwarzenegger have an affair with his housekeeper and have a son? Because I'm Arnold Schwarzenegger and nobody's going to touch me. I don't know. I don't know.
Well, I mean, the people who are ruling our country are not stupid. I think they understand that there's a basic motivational triad with regards to human behavior. There's pleasure seeking, pain avoidance, and energy conservation. And so almost everything we do, you can point to either a combination of the three or predominantly one or the other of those three things. So that there is a lot of ways to explain what motivates people, but it's usually, for me, it usually ties back to those three things: pleasure seeking, pain avoidance, and energy conservation.
I think that's what it's about for an awful lot of people, Mike. Whether we realize it or are able to articulate it or not, that's what we're all looking for.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. So what's your outlook for the future? What do you think is going to happen with Canada and going forward in the next, say, 5 to 10 years?
Well, I do think we'll see a change of government. I think we'll see a change of direction. I'm not I'm not sure about our relationship with the United States, given the various differences we have. I am gratified to see the high level of diversity in Canadian politics these days. It's nice to see people from all walks of life participating. And so we're looking forward to an even more diverse country in the next 5 years. If you think it's
Well, when I look at the media, I would tend to agree with you. There is increasing diversity, but it's sort of a superficial diversity. It's not a diversity in terms of intellectual diversity or a political philosophy diversity. Is that is like very like one direction, right? They're all headed in the same in the same boat. So I don't know. I mean,
well,
what diversity based on what? Just your skin color? I'm tired of this kind of this collectivistic attitudes and ideas that no, that's not real diversity.
well, it's a start. It's a start to at least see people of color in more uh, popular, high-profile positions, people of various gender who are being heard, who are having influence as well. I mean, that's a good thing, Mike. I think it's a good thing at the very least.
I would agree. I wish we would also include intellectual diversity and
Yeah,
you know
we're here.
political diversity in terms of
Yeah.
something that's important.
But that circles back to what we said earlier about how people are afraid to speak out. You say
Uh,
the slightest thing that could come across as racist or anti-gender, and then suddenly you're blackballed. So this is why you don't have that diversity of comment and opinion.
but why are people so afraid? Why do they care what other people think about them?
Well,
Don't they have enough strength in their own core beliefs and their own personality and their own
everybody's different.
they just need affirmation and they need praise externally.
No, I
What is
think in
it?
some cases people just need to make a living.
Yeah.
And if somebody is a speaker or an author and the public doesn't like what they have to say, then their speaking engagements are canceled. They lose money.
Mhm.
Sales might go up temporarily, but it impacts their bottom line. And that's why people keep their mouths shut. They don't need to be
It's
defended. I mean, if you look, what's that actor's name? Ricky Gervais.
oh
If
yeah.
he if he doesn't like what you write about him, he'll tell you to screw off. He can do that. Not everybody can do that.
Well, actually, like, you're talking about cancel culture, and I heard a frightening story the other day that there was a woman who was working in a doctor's office, and she started speaking very frankly to the patients about COVID, and the doctors told her, stop, don't talk to people about COVID. Like we are afraid that we're going to lose our license, and they eventually fired her. So I don't know. These doctors, like you said earlier, they seem to be pretty much captured by big pharma. They're like drug dealers for the big pharma now, and the things some of the things they're doing I think are very irresponsible. Forcing children to wear masks, forced vaccinations, these type of things.
Yeah,
I think that's bordering on child abuse, in my opinion.
the guidelines are highly inconsistent across the country and around the world. They really make no sense.
No, I mean we've had 40 years of scientific evidence that show that uh, these paper cloth masks for the general public that does nothing to stop the spread of viruses. So they threw 40 years of scientific research out the window when some powerful people decided everyone has to wear a mask.
Well, these are the people we voted for, Mike. We got the government we elect.
I didn't vote for them. I don't know about
Uh,
you.
uh, yeah, so maybe you're to blame.
Well, I guess collectively we are all to blame. We did vote for Trudeau, although I'm not entirely sure how free and fair these elections really are. I mean, we get to vote, but the leadership contests, for the most part, in every single party, I think they're rigged.
Well, it's a numbers game, the way we have it set up now. And whoever gets the highest numbers in terms of, votes in the community gets the nomination.
Mm.
That's why it's open to anybody. That's one of the beautiful parts about the process too. That any little kid can be president, especially
Well,
Trudeau.
it's that's good and bad. I mean, in some respects, I mean, you don't want to have somebody that's completely ignorant of history and totally unqualified like we do right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, what else can we talk about? What are you passionate about? What are you interested in? What do you how do you see the next generation? Anything you want to talk about.
Well, very briefly, Mike, I worry for the next generation. I worry that I worry about their future. I worry about their livelihoods. Everything is changing. I worry about the level of our education for my grandchildren and others. And I worry about the continuing dumbing down of our world and how people are putting up with it and
Mm.
not fighting back. And when they do fight back, sometimes they pay a price. But as a journalist, like as an investigative journalist, that was my way of righting the wrongs.
It's one of
You
the
know,
main reasons why I started into this. It's because I something has to
yeah,
change, and people need to wake up, and people need to figure out what's going on.
yeah,
I agree with you. I think the
yeah,
pendulum is swung way too far on one end, and we have to start swinging the pendulum back.
yeah.
I don't even consider these government schools to be educating the children. They're brainwashing them. They're propagandizing them. It's they can't think critically anymore. You're saying you worry about the future. Everyone I talk to, business owners, they say they can't even hire these people, the young people. They don't want to work, and they can't take directions. They can't think critically.
And they
So
melt. They melt
yeah.
easily. Yeah. No, the
So
effort.
what have we done to our children? This is insane that they can't. They you say something the slightest bit offensive, and then they have a meltdown. This is not the way the world works.
we
They are woefully unprepared for the
yeah,
real world.
we've coddled them. We've protected them. We didn't want them to get hurt. When sometimes you need to get hurt and dust off the mud that's on you. And so they were so protected that if somebody suddenly raises a concern, an alarm bell goes off and they have that meltdown. And it's a shame. And parents are largely responsible to a great extent. Well, they are.
I do. I agree. I agree.
You know, Parents facilitated this kid glove treatment. And so it's something that a lot of households are dealing with.
Actually, I was just visiting an acquaintance the other day, and she has a couple of young children, and I mentioned when my daughter was born, I felt like a zombie for the first 8 weeks because the baby didn't sleep for more than 3 or 4 hours at a time.
Mhm.
And she said, 8 weeks? It's been like 3 years, right? And I'm like, you're doing something wrong. If the kid cries, go and check on them, see if they need a diaper change, see if they're hungry, and if they're okay, let them cry. They're going to cry themselves to sleep, and then they'll have a good long sleep, and so will you. So there's a lot of parents that are not helping their children. They're
No,
actually harming them,
yeah,
right? Coddling them is not the way you want to bring up your child if you want them to be able to operate independently as a full human being.
yeah. And you got to start it at a young age.
Absolutely.
I
Like,
mean, I had my first job when I was like 13 years old.
what was that job?
Well, I was selling Jewish New Year cards door to door.
In Toronto here.
No, Montreal.
Oh, in Montreal. Very good. So tell me a little bit about your background. I'm interested to hear about your childhood and growing up and all the
Well, I
rest.
grew up in Montreal,
Okay.
lower middle class background.
Yeah.
I um, I left school at the age of 16.
Wow.
I went to work in a factory. I was a clothing worker,
Hmm.
a shipper, and every day on my lunch hour, I used to call a different radio station begging for an audition. And finally, somebody said, "Okay, I'll give you an audition if you stop bothering me."
At that young age, you already had a desire to get into the media business.
Oh, younger even. Oh, younger.
Wow.
I used to play radio when I was like 10, 12 years old.
And you would pretend that you were the DJ?
Yeah, no, I'd pretend I was the DJ and the news announcer, and I would listen in my parents' room because they had the best radio. I
Ah,
would listen to WABC Music Radio 77, New York City, and I would listen to 1050 Chum, and would dream of one day working at these places. And over the years, I eventually worked at Chum. I got to Chum. I was 21 years old,
wow.
and then I went to TV. Uh, I was on City TV. I was a reporter there, and I anchored the news for a number of years. And then
Until what
opened,
year? Because I remember seeing you when I was a kid,
wow, I was on,
and I'm 50. I'm 52 now.
yeah, oh, geez. Well, I was pretty young. I was on the radio. What year was this? I was on City TV from Chum Radio from 77 to 82,
Yeah,
and then City TV from 82 to 87.
there you go.
I think that was it. And then I
I
went into, yeah,
I
and
started university in '87, so
oh, did
yeah.
you? Bit of a late bloomer or what?
No, no. I mean, I was 18 actually.
Sure, that was the age. So that's an opportunity I missed out on. And after I worked at TV, I went into the world of media training. And I went to work for Hill and Knowlton, which is one of the world's largest public relations firms. And I stayed there for about 6 years and I loved it. And then I opened my own shop, Jeff Ansell and Associates, which I'm still operating. And my
Good.
focus is in two areas: media and crisis communications and presentation skills. I have a video on LinkedIn Learning, the number 8 video for 2020, number 8 out of 15,000.
I
It's
saw that.
called,
That's very impressive.
yeah, yeah, it was neat. Well, it's helping people all over the world, Mike. So that really gives me pleasure. I get emails every day from India, from Africa, from South America, and I'm very, very, very touched by them. So it's made a difference in people's lives. It's a good video. And I'm not shy in the video to talk about my own frailties and vulnerabilities and the panic attacks I used to have.
Mm.
I'd be doing a live newscast on TV and radio. I'd have a panic attack. I was about to speak with President Bush on a stage in Texas. He was giving a speech. It was my turn next to give the speech. I had a panic attack just
Mm.
before. So I mean, I know what it's like to have weaknesses and stuff. So
Well, we're
that's
all
why
human. We're all human,
we're
and
all human.
these panic and anxiety disorders are very common. Like people don't talk about it, but a lot of people have them. And
It's been,
there's
yeah, I'm going to write about it, Mike, in my new book, which I've been working on. In fact, I was working on it before our call, where I talk about these things because people need to see, hey, they're not alone. You know, people would look at somebody like me on TV, or there's others like me, believe me, who have the same problem. And they'd say, wow, looks cool as a cucumber. You can never tell he or she gets nervous. Oh, yeah? So, I mean, thankfully, I'm okay now. And I can manage it now.
that's good. That's
And a
good.
little bit of butterflies are good as long as they're flying in formation.
Well, I actually I'm a little bit concerned about the pathologizing of just normal human care behaviors. And the other thing that I'm kind of concerned about is if you say you do suffer from something like anxiety and panic disorders, attacks, things like that. If you go to get treatment, it's like a never-ending therapy session that just goes on for the rest of your life. right? I think they need to treat people so they can overcome their problems and do it as quickly as possible, and not see them as some kind of recurring revenue source that they can just milk the cow for the rest of their life.
Well, I'm absolutely no authority on anxiety. But within the context of anxiety in public speaking,
Hmm.
which is very, very high, I discovered ways to overcome that in seconds. And you're going to have to look at my LinkedIn learning video to discover how.
I will do that. Does it have anything to do with breathing techniques?
In part, but there's something even more impacting than breathing
Okay.
when it comes to managing anxiety while public speaking.
Now, I came across something very interesting to me, anyways. There was some scientific research that showed that psilocybin is actually quite effective at treating people with anxiety uh, and also addictions. Like people have been able to overcome alcoholism and drug addictions with as little as one dose of psilocybin. Um, it's a naturally occurring compound. Most commonly, people know it as magic mushrooms.
Oh, magic
But
mushrooms.
apparently it's powerful. It's very powerful, and it's helped a lot of people in some cases. Up to 70% of people that have suffered from addictions,
Yeah.
even 3 years later, have been able to manage them.
That's unbelievable. I've heard about the merits of magic mushrooms for a number of years now, and I know that a number of big researchers are investigating its merits.
Well,
So,
I mean, I think it was squashed when they, criminalized it, and without really good cause. I mean, it's impossible to overdose on them,
right,
and so the research just stopped when the U.S. government, made it an illegal substance.
right.
But again, I mean, uh, and I'm sure that big pharma had nothing to do with continuing to suppress any of these naturally occurring compounds that could heal people like permanently.
Bigger than me, wouldn't know.
What else can we talk about? What else are you passionate about? What else do you want to let people know? There's people really have a desire to learn and wake up and figure out what's going on. So how do you suggest that they do that?
Be careful what you read on the internet. I would sooner hold a book in my hand.
Hmm. That's a
Otherwise,
dying. That's like seems to be a dying
yeah.
pastime nowadays. People actually physically reading hard copy books.
I used to, I used to be so proud of my book collection, and then of course I got on a Kindle, and
Oh
I have
yeah,
about 500 books there. But I always make sure that I'm reading one book.
there you
And
go.
right now I'm reading Ken Follett's book, Column of Fire.
Ah, okay,
And I love these big, juicy books to get into.
very
To
nice.
follow up the Pillars of the Earth. So I always enjoy having one book to take as I walk around the house and I sit in the various places. I have my book with me.
Oh, let me see. I tend to. I am not much of a fiction reader. I like nonfiction for the most part, but I'll let me pick it and show you a book that I've read and reread so many times. I don't know why I keep rereading it. I mean, I'm almost getting to the point where I can memorize it, but let me just grab it and I'll get your thoughts here. Okay, let me just plug my mic, my monitors back in. There we go. Okay, here's the book.
That's interesting. I haven't heard of it.
Oh, really? Oh, gosh, you got to read it. It's like Hayek was won the Nobel Prize for economics years and years ago, but this book basically describes what's happening in Canada and around the world. Really, we are on the road to serfdom. Uh, it's a unless we can do something to turn the tide. There's, in my opinion, a deeply dystopian future awaiting us.
I'm going to get that book. Thank you for that tip.
Well, I'll let you borrow my copy. Not a
I like
problem.
to mark up. One of the beautiful things about getting the book is I like to grab the highlighter,
Yeah.
note the places that are meaningful to me.
Well, this is a classic book. The introduction is by Milton Friedman, another Nobel Prize winning economist.
Right.
And the thing I love about it is it's an accessible book. It's not you don't need a degree in economics or political philosophy or anything like that. The general public can read it and really get the message. So
Right.
I'm happy that I brought that to you, and hopefully other people that are listening, if they haven't read it, they should definitely grab a copy because it's there's so many things in there that are playing out right now that it's gonna wake a lot of people up if they read that book.
Thank you for the tip. I'm looking forward to reading it.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. What else can we talk about? What do you want people to know?
You know, my parting message, especially at this time of year, it's all about giving.
Hmm.
It's all about giving, Mike.
Yeah.
It's not how much you have, it's what you do with it. It's not how much you have, it's what you give away.
And
That's the
and
thing.
what I really want people to know is it doesn't have to be stuff. You should
No.
give them your love.
Oh yeah.
You need to give people love and their attention and pay attention to them. Listen to them.
Well, in the world we live in now, the digital world and so on, people are being marginalized. So there's
Well,
a
they're
lot of
being
people.
dehumanized by their own government. All of these lockdowns are dehumanizing. All of these measures, the mask wearing, the compliance, the threats, beating people up in Walmart because they're not wearing a mask. I mean, this stuff's crazy. It's all dehumanizing. It's being done on purpose.
It's just our leaders' ways of reacting to this terrible situation we're living in. Will there be lessons to be learned? For sure. We're not quite there yet, but hopefully we'll be better prepared if, God forbid, this happens again and comes back with an even more of a vengeance.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it's we're coming to a tipping point. It's like either they win or we do, right? Either there will be liberty in Canada or there will be authoritarian rule. And that's where we're headed.
What can I tell you, Mike?
Tell
I'm
me
like a
I'm
big
wrong.
red.
Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me something that you see a different future that I do.
Well, I see a future where government takes an increasingly influential role in the everyday lives of Canadians. I see a future that concerns me about that. And I just hope that people remember what Canada is all about. It's why we all came here in the first place. And freedom of speech is fundamental. And thank you for the work that you do, Mike.
Well, thank you very much. I hope we can chat again sometime.
I would love it. I would love it. Thank you. I've enjoyed our conversation. I look forward to seeing more of your interviews online, and I'm grateful that you had interest in speaking to me in the first place, sir.
Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you, Mike.
Take care. Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas, all the rest.
Happy Hanukkah, Merry Christmas.
Take care.
Mike, stay on the line.